We travel from Washington, D.C. to New York City for the Clinton Global Initiative meeting where she's speaking. Magatte was born in Senegal and spent much of her childhood in France. Her experiences in both Africa and Europe posed to her an important question. Why are some countries rich and others poor? Magatte has founded several high-end Senegalese brands. As a business leader, she says her work is about creating more opportunities for entrepreneurs while changing perceptions of Africa.
You know, it's interesting because I read a sentence in kind of your bio that jumped out at me. And one of the things that strikes me, having just known you for a short period of time, is just how upbeat you are. And you wrote, having loved and lost, and then in parentheses, my first husband and first company, I'm now healed. Talk to me about hardships along the way, because, you know, Ernest Hemingway wrote, the world breaks everyone and afterward we're strong at the broken places. Adversity kind of builds that character in a sense, doesn't it? I mean, can you talk to me about your journey and what you've learned through loss?
Actually, it touches me that you read that part. Yes. So what I learned from loss is that nothing is permanent. And so when I remember all the years of happiness, and then all of a sudden, within a second, my life changed, especially at the announcement that my husband had passed away, that was, it's just like all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, things can change for the best or for the worse. And I think that for me was the biggest lesson. And from there, what do you learn? You learn what I think the Buddhists know, what every wise society knows, which is there's no holding in this world. And if there's no holding in this world, then there's more freedom in a way. You feel more free. And so what I've learned mainly is to not attach myself to anything, whether good or bad. It doesn't mean that I cannot be committed to something. It doesn't mean that I cannot be passionate about something. But it means that I also have to observe it from here. And so for me, that has been the biggest learning. So that's why today, when things are good, I observe it. And when things are bad, I also observe it, knowing that what they have in common is they too shall pass. And so that's the lesson for me.
Magatte's businesses include founding skincare company Tiossan, the first luxury skincare line in Senegal. The products are based on traditional Senegalese recipes and ingredients.
I mentioned the first company wasn't a huge success, but now you're off to your second venture, Tiossan, and hopefully
Tiossan.
I said it right.
Yeah.
Talk to me about it. What is it?
So Tiossan basically is it's an artisan skincare company that's inspired by the wisdom of the ancient healers of Senegal, my home country. And what we're trying to do is to really introduce our approach to beauty to the rest of the world. Because where I come from, beauty is first and foremost a matter of health and wellness. And I've always learned it that way. But then as I moved to the West, I started to learn that they have made beauty this very shallow thing. First of all, for people in the Western world, mostly it's about the face and the hair, where for us very early on, we are trained on the fact that the skin on your body is the largest organ of the body, and it absorbs 65% of anything that you put on within 23 seconds. Therefore, you really got to rethink it again. And as the largest organ of your body, and as any organ, it needs to be kept in an optimal state of health on a daily basis, which means there are specific things that you need to do on a daily basis to cater to it. And so once I noticed that, once I noticed that gap in understanding and approach, I felt like this was something that needed to be tackled. And as we tackle it and provide these, great products and great knowledge to women all around and help them, achieve better skin and better health and quite frankly looking better, that would also fuel jobs back home, my country, as well as, create a new sense of dignity and recognition for African women and how good they are at taking care of their skin, and that, they have things to teach other people as well.
Recognizing the entrepreneurial talent in Africa, Alibaba founder Jack Ma created the Africa Netpreneur Prize, awarding $1 million for African startups in 2019 and another $1.5 million in 2020. Ma says that Africa today is like China 20 years ago. There's great opportunity for young entrepreneurs.
Let me ask you, because I was reading this and I find it fascinating, this 3-pillar concept, nurturing the African Renaissance, branding, education, and entrepreneurship. Talk to me about that. Is that a foreign concept there? Is it a tough sell? And how did that come about, the 3-pillar concept?
Well, yeah. Insofar, basically for me, it all started with, I always talk about it. I have 2 concerns in this world. 2 concerns that have fueled everything I've ever done in my conscious state from the moment I became, like a conscious adult, which was very, very early on. The fact that on one end, the knowledge, the constant reminder that my people were dying at sea, getting into little fisherman's boat, trying to cross the ocean to make it to Europe to find a job. Most of them don't make it. Most of them are laying at the bottom of the ocean serving as fish food right now. And on the other end, my culture is slowly also disappearing because for a lot of Africans, if you've made it, the way you show status or the way you aspire to status is to want Western, brands, right? So what you have is the elite is all buying imported Western brands, and the bottom of the pyramid, which is the mass, they're buying knockout products of Western brands that are made in China, India, different parts of Asia, or even the Middle East. And in the middle, basically, traditional, authentic, indigenous products are being squeezed out. So to me, it's like, okay, on one end I have people dying because they're looking for work. On another end, I have my culture dying because nobody cares. I also believe that you can't force people to anything. First of all, people are leaving because they need jobs. The only way for me to have them stay home, to help them stay home, and it's not have them because it shouldn't be forcing, but to help them stay home, to have a choice, an alternative, then it means somehow, somewhere, we have to create jobs in Africa, back home, so they can have that choice to stay here and still provide for their families. And on the other end, if I want for my culture to not disappear like it is now, I have to find a way to make it, to expand, to make it expand. Because anything that doesn't expand will eventually die. And once it does, the only way people are going to rediscover me is going to be from museum. And I don't want to be discovered from museum. So around the time when I was making all of those observations and just going through my own pain and watching it and seeing what I needed to do about it, I remember this one day, during this trip to Senegal, I wanted some hibiscus drink, a hibiscus beverage, which is my traditional beverage, one of my traditional beverages. And you couldn't have it because people were like, where did you just come from? I mean, that's the stuff that the villagers drink. It's the stuff that it is indigenous to us. Therefore, only poor people can drink it because it's easy access, right? So when you go to someone's home and all of that, the hibiscus is supposed to be the juice of teranga. Teranga meaning hospitality. That's what people give you everywhere. But here, no. Now it's Coke, it's Pepsi, it's Fanta. That's what you give your guests to show them that you made it to a certain level, or to show them that you care about them because you spent money on this, more money than what the hibiscus costs. You see, that's how status works. So in any case, after being literally ill to my stomach for 3 days, I decided, you know what, this is ridiculous. This is energy that comes from negativity, but turn it around into a positive, where it becomes inspiration, right? So at that moment, I just got up and I was like, okay, I'm going to start a brand that's going to have embedded in it the very culture that I want to promote. And we're going to take it to the US, make it the beloved juice of US elite. So by the time we make it back home to Senegal, it's going to be like, oh yeah, we heard that's what the elite Americans are drinking. So yeah, that's cool. Let's drink it. So do a form of reverse colonialism on the minds of my contemporaries. And so that's how we got started. Consumer brands actually have this power of getting you into a culture that you had nothing about and you even making it yours. And what happens when you do that? Well, you become that culture also. It's you, and by adopting it, you're effectively expanding it. You're one more citizen of that culture.
And the smart thing about what you're doing, and I want you to talk a little bit about it, is the percentage of the proceeds go back to creating innovative schools so that you can create this engine.
So both branding and entrepreneurship is something that we're doing, I am doing, because I don't want to preach until I practice, since I don't want to preach without practicing. It's very important to me. Otherwise, I don't feel legit. So we are doing what we're doing today so that we can create some jobs for today. But the world that's going to be coming up, it's going to be a much more. So I need that whatever we're doing today, that I'm doing, others are doing along these lines. We're going to have to multiply it. It's going to have to go. Now I'm going to use the word way faster than ever. And so when it comes to, but that can only be done with an entrepreneurial mindset, right? And if we want when you look at that, the need for an entrepreneur mindset to do these things, yet you look at the education system. And in the US has its problems. I am so against the education system the way we know it right now, because it is not a system that allows for creativity, innovation, and critical thinking. Critical thinking is big deal. And I feel like we're losing it more and more. American kids are not as bad as our kids are when it comes to that, because we have the French education system with, on top of it, a little layer of colonialism. So our kids basically are trained to become French bureaucrats. And as we all know, bureaucrats do not create companies. That's just not the way it works. So you can start to see the disadvantage that we're having. So at this point, I'm not even interested in catching up with the so-called best education in the world. We have to leapfrog, because even the best education in the world, supposedly, now has to reform itself. And I think you've been hearing it with school choice needs and all that stuff. So I'm a big proponent for a new type of school where we foster innovation and creativity in kids so that they really develop this critical thinking. And so this type of schools we build, but my husband built, it's basically schools where they use the power of Socratic practice, the art of conversing through questioning. We want kids who question everything. Because if you're going to create and innovate, you cannot be someone who accepts the status quo. Those two just don't go together. So this is radical. And the world we're going to get in, it's going to be a radical world. If we think we've seen change, we have seen nothing yet.
Every year, the World Bank ranks countries on how easy it is to do business there. In 2020, China, India, and Nigeria were among the countries that improved the most from the previous year. Only 2 African nations made it to the top 50, Rwanda and Mauritius. Most fell at the bottom of the ranking.
So what you're saying is fantastic, and it's very true, but how do you break through that clutter? How do you...
Yes. So
if you're in Senegal, you want to cut through there. I mean,
well, if you're in Senegal, but this is what the trick was then. The trick was, okay, so if brands are so important, and by the way, so by building consumer brands, I'm going to be able to answer my trouble of by building consumer brands that have embedded in them that have embedded in their DNA the very best of my culture, that would take care of my culture disappearing. And as companies like that thrive, I'm also able to create jobs back home. And as companies like that thrive, you become a role model and others emulate you. And with that compounding effect, now all of a sudden we'll be able to create the hundreds, thousands, millions of jobs that are needed back home to give people a choice to stay. So that's the plan. That has always been the plan. And because of that, I say branding, one of my pillars, branding. Then I talk about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is the fact of, you've got to build these companies. And so with this system, what really is the key? The key is to understand that the demographic that's into culture, the demographic that for whom culture is a key, because what you have to think about now is, okay, you have all the folks, you know how the curve of acceptance works? Here you're like a little fringe brand, and you're like, no, only the weirdos buy you. And then eventually you become mainstream, but by that point, you better start working on something else because it's going to go down from there. So most people are mainstream, and they're only buying what's already hot and cool, because they're not going to take the risk to not be the cool people or the cool kids in their group, right? Where most of us are followers. So the followers are not going to be the one buying my brands, because they're like, oh, African stuff we heard, oh yeah, well, whatever. They're not going to take the risk of being seen, first of all, with something that nobody else knows, because if their friend sees them with my product, they have no idea, they have no way of knowing if my product's expensive or not. It doesn't help them achieve status. Status only works after you know what's going on. So what you have to do is to go down to the people who are going to be your early adopters. And there, in that group of people, we know in our field, we call them the cultural creative demographic. These are people for whom ethics and culture concerns are the number one, guide for their purchasing. And these, by the way, are the elite customers of tomorrow. These are the people who are driving everything upward. They're the people who made organic hot, people who made fair trade hot, and they just continue on going above and beyond. So this is the demographic that is Africa's hope, in a way. And that's why I tell Africans and other people in the developing world, other parts of the developing world, this is our time. This customer base has come, and it's almost like they came specifically for us. Now you got to go and you have to take it. And by the way, if us Africans, indigenous people don't do it, American kids are coming. They're coming. They do Peace Corps volunteer work. They see the cool stuff we have in our countries. Between that and the power of branding that they've been raised in, they put it together. It's a new packaged product, and they go serve it to that customer base, and they're going to be up there. So I tell my African friends, if you don't do it, they're going to do it. And they're already doing it, by the way. Check Sambazon, Guayaki, the Himalayan, the goji berry stuff, all of that stuff. It's who is doing it. It's white American kids who discovered all of this cool stuff on their various trips to our countries. And they were smart enough to build companies around it.
Magatte, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.